From 1996 until now, Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt has taken us on one insane journey. From fighting on trains, to being chased down by both cars and motorcycles, to hanging off the world's tallest building, to hanging off of planes, to even diving into the deep ocean. And almost 30 years later, we finally made it to the final reckoning. But the question is this one of the best films in the franchise? But more importantly, does this film have a satisfying conclusion to this epic story? Well, we'll be discussing that and much more in today's spoiler-free review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Ethan Hunt and his IMF team race against time to find the entity, a rogue artificial intelligence that can destroy mankind. Now, before we get into my spoiler-free thoughts of this movie, let's get the conversation going in the comments below. Let me know first if you are a fan of this franchise, if you were excited to see this film, but more importantly, once you've seen the movie, let's talk about the pros and the cons. Was this a satisfying conclusion? Was this one of the best action movies in the franchise? And let's talk about the franchise. Where does this movie rank for you all? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So I cannot believe that this film franchise started back in 1996 and has gone on to make 8 films and has become one of my favorite film franchises of all time. And this movie in particular was easily one of my most anticipated films of this year. So let's get going and talk about this film and talk about the things that I really enjoy. Starting off with the positives, Tom Cruise to me has found a director that sees movies and makes movies like he likes them, and that is in his collaboration with Christopher McQuarrie. This being Christopher McQuarrie's 4th film in the series, him being the only director to direct multiple movies in this film franchise, he just knows how to make high quality, intense, smart spectacles and has a say in crafting some of the most innovative and impressive stunts you'll see in blockbuster movie making today. Now, I'll be honest, in this film, because Christopher McQuarrie is not only the director, but he also is the co-writer, I much more preferred his direction in this movie and his craftsmanship in making the movie more so than the penmanship, and we'll talk about the script a little bit later. But as far as the direction goes, I really thought that he just brings this level of intensity. He also has this sheer amount of detail and depth that he adds to the way he puts these films together. The levels in which Christopher McQuarrie knows exactly how to build suspense and unnerving tension is truly masterful, and he just knows how to add in the right amount of levity in the right spots, and he also knows how to put these characters in these very difficult, or should I say impossible positions, and he does it with such ease and confidence. Another thing that I really enjoy what Christopher McQuarrie did with this film and his direction is there's this overwhelming sense of doom and gloom, and the tone, to me, it's one of the darker movies within this entire franchise. So again, Christopher McQuarrie to me is one of the best directors working in Hollywood, especially when it comes to action movies and his collaboration with Tom Cruise. So to me, he did a good job of capturing the tone, the tension, the suspense, recapturing some of my favorite elements in the franchise as a whole. Like, this is a true love letter to the film franchise, and he just really knocked it out of the park when it came to the direction. Now again, I have some issues with the script and some pacing things, but overall, I thought Christopher McQuarrie did a wonderful job in putting this movie together. Now, sticking with the film's productional elements, I'm a big fan of how the film incorporates the score and how the score is almost like a character within itself when it is used properly. Now, this time around, we have 2 new composers compared to the composer we have for the last 2 films, and this isn't my favorite score in the franchise or even in my top 3, but with that still being said, I did enjoy how they composed the film, and I like the musical compositions and how it added, again, it played into the darker moments, it added more horns and made certain scenes really feel hopeless. Now, performance-wise, I thought most performances were solid for the most part. This is a really fun ensemble cast. This isn't my favorite like ragtag group that we see Ethan put together, but there are some standouts amongst his crew. First and foremost, we have the vets, Luther and Benji. They're always on their A game, and they really add this sense of familiarity to the films, and I like their individual roles and how important they were to this mission. And with that, I would say both actors really carried a lot of the emotional weight to the overall narrative, and I can neither confirm or deny if I may have shed a tear in a particular scene, but again, Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg did a really great job in their roles. Also really enjoyed seeing the return of Angela Bassett as Erica Sloan, who was the former CIA director, now president in this film. She always demands your attention when she's on screen. She has incredible screen presence. She's very regal in the role, and I really enjoyed the back and forth that we see between her and Ethan. Now, there was also some newcomers that I enjoyed in the cast, who we'll talk about here in a second, but there was also a particular character and actor who returned. We haven't seen this person in a very long time. I won't reveal who they are, even though they're on the IMDb page as far as actors in the film. They're in the teaser and the trailer. I won't reveal it here, but all I'll say is it was nice to see that character. I like how they were included in the story and how helpful they were to the overall mission. But speaking back to the newcomers of this cast, I really enjoyed Nick Offerman as the general. I enjoyed the back and forth that character had with the president. Also, shout out to my Severance fans out there. Tremel Tillman, who plays this captain, he was definitely a standout to me. He brought his milkshake flavor to the role, and I thought that he was great. Like, the back and forth that he had with Ethan really was a standout to me. So again, those are some newcomers that I really enjoyed. And also, like I said, the person that returns, I like how they were added in this story. But the MVP of the series and also this film, continuing to amaze while performing the most dangerous and insane stunts you'll ever see, but also never forgetting to adding more dimensions and layers and complexities to his character Ethan Hunt. And I'm talking about the one and only last true movie star in Hollywood, in my opinion, and that's Tom Cruise. Again, whether it's watching him putting his life on the line while hanging off the side of a biplane, or running faster than a car, or watching his levels of emotion while trying to save the world and his friends, Tom Cruise just knows this character in and out and makes you as an audience member feel like you just had a full course meal while watching him perform. Look, whether you like him, love him, or you hate him, I love the dedication, I love the passion, I love the commitment, the time, the effort that he puts in these films, but also what he puts in the character Ethan Hunt. One of my favorite characters of all time. I'm a big Ethan Hunt fan. I'm a big Tom Cruise fan. But again, focusing on this movie, I just love, again, the dedication and the respect that he has in his process and always putting the audience first. Again, a really strong performance as Ethan. And if this is indeed his last mission, regardless of the criticism that I have of this movie, Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt will go down, again, as one of my favorite characters in modern cinema. Now, lastly, I go to see these films for many different reasons, but one in particular, I want to see that action. I want to see these crazy stunts that Tom Cruise is going to pull off. And I'll be honest, the film isn't as action heavy as I would have liked to have seen, especially when you think about Fallout and Rogue Nation and even the last movie. But with that said, when the action does hit, it hits in this movie. Now, there are two main huge action set pieces, one that's at the tail end of the second act, and there's another one in the finale, and both of them are easily some of the biggest and greatest action sequences that you'll see all year. Now, I won't get into the nitty-gritty of what those scenes are and what they entail, but I will say this. My personal favorite involves a submarine, and let me tell y'all something, that scene is truly terrifying and the definition of edge of your seat action, and it lasted for at least like 20 minutes, and if I'm being honest, I could have went another 20 minutes. Like, it was so enthralling, so exhilarating, it was just so well put together. It is just filmmaking at its finest.
Shooting underwater bears always a sense of danger.
And then you have the biplane sequence that will definitely have a lot of people talking and will probably be a lot of people's favorite. And I understand that. It's also super tense, very exhilarating, but also, as we'll discuss later, I have one issue with the biplane sequence that I'll talk about later. But overall, again, the submarine, the biplane sequence, this is what you go to the movies for. These are some of the best action set pieces in the entire franchise. Now, I'll end my positives with this. I really enjoyed the main characters' arcs and their performances. I love the film's callbacks to the original Mission Impossible, but also Mission Impossible 3, which to me are recommended to watch to fully appreciate the connections that it has within its narrative. And again, when the action comes, it is entertainment at its best. Now, switching gears and getting to the elements of the film that I didn't quite like, as well as the parts of the film that I didn't like at all. Now, getting the nitpicks and the minor things out of the way, I'm a fan fan of Hayley Atwell, and I'm also a big fan of Palm Clementif, who play respectively Grace and also Paris. I'm going to be honest with you all. I thought that they were underused and very underwhelming in this movie. Now, they both have little moments that are important to the mission, but narratively speaking, their characters aren't given enough attention, especially when you look at someone like Elsa, who they're essentially filling her role. I just feel like both of them weren't given much to do. For example, you think of the character Paris in this film, who has this personal vendetta towards Gabriel, and the way the film handles that vendetta is just disappointing. Another minor issue that I have with the film is the use of flashbacks and montages. This speaks to a much larger problem that I have with the film here that I'll talk about in a bit, but the way the film uses past events and how it's displayed in the film, it felt cheesy and honestly out of place for this particular franchise. Now, last thing I'll mention in my minor issues is this movie has been marketed as the final mission, so of course you would expect it to have a longer runtime if this is indeed the last time we're going to see these characters in the story. But I'll say this, and I'll express a little bit later in this breakdown and my criticisms. This film to me did not, and I repeat, did not need to be almost 3 hours long. Now, not once was I checking my phone, was I bored, but when you look at the overall story and how we get to the end of the story, I can confidently say, again, this movie did not need to be almost 3 hours long, which is a perfect segue into my main issues with this film. Now, I'm a fan of Dead Reckoning Part 1. I reviewed it on the channel. You can check out my thoughts on that movie, but unfortunately, the shortcomings and the flaws that I had with that film, it unfortunately made this story feel very messy. Now, for what I've come to understand as far as the filmmaking, the behind the scenes of these movies, especially with the collaboration of Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise, the script is always evolving, right? They're always changing the script, and by the way, this isn't anything exclusive to Mission Impossible. There's tons of franchises that change the script the day of when they're shooting certain scenes, so it's nothing new. But as it pertains to this franchise, it's worked out for them, right? You think about Rogue Nation, Fallout, the first Dead Reckoning, but this time around, for me personally, the way the script works in the setups from the previous films, especially the first Dead Reckoning, it felt very overstuffed and led to the most exposition-heavy film in the entire franchise, in my opinion. I'm not kidding when I say that literally the first hour of this film is one giant exposition dump with little to no action, which, by the way, as far as the action or the lack of action in this film, understanding that this is a franchise that's kind of a high-obtained, smart, intelligent spy espionage, so I'm not always like looking to the action, but as far as how they replace the action with, again, exposition, they're constantly repeating themselves over and over again, and they treat the events from the previous film like it was 10 years ago versus it only being 2 years, which is the shortest time between movies. It felt like we spent so much unnecessary time explaining the entity and what it's capable of, and it made the first hour and that first half of the movie very tedious to watch, and at times it was just flat out rough to watch as well. Like, it's way too much plot going on, and it really affected the pacing. But again, thankfully, the second and the final act really boosted a very, like I said, clunky and overstuffed first half of this movie. Now, getting to the biggest issues that I had with Dead Reckoning Part 1, and my biggest issue that I had with this film as well, and that is the use of the entity and Gabriel. I personally feel like the looming threat of artificial intelligence in films and television and overall storytelling in general has worked in the past and can work, but how it's used in Part 1 and in this film, I wasn't a fan. The way the film incorporates the entity in Part 1 and how it's used in this film, to me, it's just lazy. Like, this is such a high-end, smart, intelligent, unique, innovative franchise, and I hold it to a very high standard, and I just did not like the entity. Like, it's very tropey. You've seen the tropes 1,000 times. Like, this felt like Age of Ultron all over again. Like, they set up the entity as this looming threat, which, again, the tone is there, but when you see the execution of how they use the entity, it feels like it's just pointless. Like, again, it's very Age of Ultron. Like, they have all the powers of the world, technology in the world to their disposal, but the way that they execute it just feels so lazy, so underwhelming, and the film suffers from just so many tropes, again, that you've seen so many different times, and it just becomes, over a period of time, it's sidelined in its own narrative, and it becomes less and less interesting. Which, speaking of of less interesting, I'm officially putting Gabriel as the worst villain in this franchise. Yes, I'm putting Gabriel over Sean from Mission Impossible 2. I'm putting him over the forgettable Kurt from Ghost Protocol. The way this film positions him in part 1 as this in-game villain who was the reason Ethan got into the MI program, and not once did I feel like he was the right physical threat towards Ethan Hunt. Now granted, on paper and also on screen, Gabriel has done some devastating things, right? Like he was the one that killed Elsa, which still pisses me off thinking about it. And also, just a side tangent, the way that they didn't address Elsa in this film was kind of frustrating, but again, that's just a side tangent. But again, focusing on Gabriel, he does things that are very upsetting, that should make you hate the character. And he does something in this film very early on that's very devastating. But again, the way the film positions the character, I just never felt that he was deserving of the role of being the biggest threat ever that Ethan has come across. Look, I'm going to call it like I see it. I'm going to be honest. I thought the actual performance from the actor that plays Gabriel is just flat out terrible in this movie. He's in a different atmosphere in this film. He's in a different era code. He's in a whole different movie. The way the tone is set with the character altogether, it's laughable at times. Like the way that he's portraying evil and having to be 10 steps ahead of someone, it never feels believable. And again, going back to my issue with the finale or the biplane sequence, he was the glaring issue. He stood out like a sore thumb. Like the way he's playing the villain, all he was missing was a mustache to twirl. Like he's playing like he's channeling Dr. Robotnik from the Sonic franchise. Like I am not a fan of Gabriel. I did not like him in part 1. I hated him in part 2, and he is, to me, the worst thing about this film. So those are my pros, my nitpicks, my main criticisms with Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Before I give you all my overall thoughts on my score, I want to take this time to thank you all for making it to this point in the video. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed the commentary and the breakdown so far, hit that thumbs up, consider hitting the share button, but also leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you're watching this on YouTube, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, or if you're listening to this on Spotify or watching us on Spotify or listening to Apple Podcasts, consider following my podcast as well. With all that being said, overall, as a lifelong fan, I found Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning to be a solid yet extremely flawed addition to the franchise. Despite struggling with some convoluted plot points and callbacks, the film builds to a truly tense and edge-of-your-seat satisfying climax. The film is highlighted by two incredible, impressive set pieces. The underground submarine sequence and the plane stunt were incredibly outstanding cinematic feats. But again, it suffers from pacing issues and an overstuffed plot across its nearly 3-hour runtime, especially with its very clunky, unsatisfying first half. But despite its issues, Tom Cruise's unwavering dedication to Ethan Hunt brings you back to the fold and kept me enthralled. Ultimately, The Final Reckoning feels like a big thank you love letter to the dedicated fans over the years, tying the entire series together. While bloated and convoluted at times, the film still delivers thrilling moments and a mostly satisfying ending to this chapter. I'm going to give Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning a 3.5 out of 5. Now, I'm going to have a new ranking of the Mission Impossible movies and just some other content surrounding the franchise. So again, keep an eye out for that content. But again, overall, I liked the movie. I didn't love it. And it's somewhere, again, I'm going to have a ranking soon. It's somewhere right in the middle. It's nowhere near Fallout or Ghost Protocol or Rogue Nation, but again, it's somewhere in the middle. But hey, that's my thoughts of the film. Now I want to hear yours. Again, would you like, would you love, what didn't you like, what action set piece stood out to you, where does this movie rank for you in the franchise, are you satisfied with the ending, do you want to see more? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Again, thank you all for watching this review. Many more things coming pretty soon, but again, I appreciate you all. Don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.